Bob Scott became the heart and soul of ACDC. He once said, and I think he was very right, somebody asked him, "Are you ACDC trying to joke in the life and fashion of the Eagles?" And that's exactly what he was. He was the fulcrum. He was the focus. He brought the whole thing together. When he arrived, suddenly, flash, everything fitted in. It had to happen. It could not happen. It was too Bond stepped into that group. It was clear. You know, they couldn't fire him if they wanted to, because he was the perfect guy that was going to do it. And same for Bond. Had Bond got his down at ACDC, God knows. I mean, I hate to think that he would have been wallowing in the trailer 80s, flogging some blues rock there. That's a terrible thought too. He was too good for that.
The band decided to relocate to Melbourne, and in their house in St Kilda began to work on fresh material that would utilise their new singer.
ACDC, I think 6 moves for Sydney to Melbourne was crucial. Now, the feeling was that they weren't getting far enough, quickly enough in Sydney. They'd probably reached the stage where they were still playing the same clubs, the same old people, and blah, 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 blah. It no longer had any platform. They weren't moving forward. Moving to Melbourne opened things up. It seemed much more of a cosmopolitan, more places to play, and there were plenty of people who knew who they were, and they were desperate. They learned their shots in Sydney, so they went to Melbourne as a decent band, not as a new bunch on the block trying to sort of make a first impact. They had made that first impact, they had confidence, they showed on stage, and suddenly people were saying, "Yeah, that was very well, it's good."
After further intensive touring, in February 1975, ACDC released their debut album. Cut in 10 days, High-Kids killed off memories of their previous Glam incarnations. It was all out rock and roll.
Well, the Australian high voltage was a bit of a patchwork. It was done very fast because people like that. They didn't have a huge budget. They didn't have 10, 12 months to play with. They had to go and get it done and get out. And I think it sounds on occasion like it's the right record. It's almost like a demo. We now have an album of our songs. Let's see and assess strength and weaknesses. So while it was commercially released, I think they treated it very much as an assessment of where they are and how they're going to get further.
I think High Voltage kind of gave them the taste of things to come, and I think that they were hungry for it. And Australia at the time was very hungry for a band like them. You can remember at the time there was, if you go back to kind of late 60s, there was, artists around like Norman Rowe and Masters Apprentices, and I think, but we can get bands like Queen touring, or we can get Deep Purple touring. They were kind of barren in that sense as far as rock was concerned. And then you had bands on the flip side like Little River Band, for instance, that so were, going to quench the rock appetite. But Beatles in Australia at the time definitely had, Fox's hand in one hand, BB in the neck in the other, Singlet, Marlboro Lights. I found the record, and I'm sure it all got back to basics. I think ACDC filled that void in Australian rock suburbia that was so needed at the time.
High Voltage was just raw, timeless, basic rock and roll, and it didn't need, glitter or fat heels, and it still set it up fantastically well. Even if the band was still embryonic, you can actually see the joy in that record, the way it is. So then they're starting to figure out how to write songs with Bon Scott. This is the thing. Bon has come in, and he's got his little notebooks and he's got ideas. He's got narrative stories. There's even sort of a bit of a suggestion that he started to write in the latter fraternity days, but because that was much more of an intellectual kind of band, that, his songs weren't going to work for him. But so Bon came into the band with, if not ideas, he had a real urge to express himself, and he's just a master wordsmith. So, nothing around just getting shy. He's going to give them this focus to work around and shape things. And then got George. This is the whole thing. George wasn't going to follow the church, but he was always going to be able to give it a dynamic shape.
Holy shit.
And just get that that was an estimate. They want the money. Church or record.
laugh because
Very good. That's it. I'm going to use it.
They soon changed their lineup again, recruiting Phil Rudd on drums and Mark Evans on bass. There were bands that
Always
became
waiting
and on stage their performance
for
was
the album
electric.
seconds about
God in particular developing into an iconic performer, and his true character was shown through at last.
Bon Scott was the first rock and roll non-sex symbol. That's what he was. He had a hairy chest, he had a big up, he had really bad hair, you know.
he was that haircut was what do you call him? What's it got a name?
Probably one of the deal with if you were male.
To me,
You've got mashed
before
potatoes.
Yeah, no, Bon Scott. He had a bogan hairstyle.
Logan.
Yeah.
Oh, bloody, what's the name? Bloody, what do you call it? Stupid ass.
So people like that
Yeah.
always in a way, then he was.
Hey?
Long hair for that. With the,
Yeah, bogan.
yeah, that's another name.
Oh, God.
Not just stuck in rock and
No,
roll.
we'll call it just bogan.
He got into the part on stage as being Bon Scott. It was an extension of what he was and what he is. And he couldn't be anything else apart from Bon Scott, but he accentuated it brilliantly. So that you knew that what he was seeing on stage was the real thing, but he also knew that it was a real thing magnified to the nth degree. And there are very few people who can pull that trick off to the extent that everybody accepts it.
Angus, meanwhile, was coming into his own, sharing the limelight with Bon and blowing audiences away through his electric performances.
I suspect a lot of it has to do with Dirk. He was so young when they started. He didn't know what the hell to do. You know, he'd probably been told by his old brothers, you get out there and do something. So he just started doing that. Pretty much I'm sure how it really did develop. He didn't know what else to do. He never, you know, he probably he'd loved Chuck Berry, so he needed that walk, so he'd take a bit of that, he'll run around a bit, bang his head, and then he goes down the store. So it's like, well, we'll keep on doing this then. It's difficult to quantify what Angus is about and what Angus stands in the whole
Angus, he's a
gamut
schoolboy.
of ACDC, the whole mythology of ACDC. To me, Don in the 1970s was the heart of ACDC. Angus was its soul. There's something about Angus that makes you feel he is so important in the whole style of philosophy of DC that they put it in a modern perspective to lose Brian Johnson. They lost Malcolm Young for a while, but losing Angus will be the end. They could not replace Angus because he is the soul.
Oh, so many,
They were brothers.
yeah, no, and he,
I
they
don't
want
think he
people.
understands
I don't know.
why he's so revered loved by ACDC fans. He knows they do, and he just gets on with what he does. But it's something about it. It's the spirituality he has in the way he plays his music. And I'm not talking about a religious spirituality. I'm talking about the way he connects with his music. And a lot of that, I still believe, has to do with the way that Bon Scott brought him out of his shell. The way that Bon Scott made him part of what ACDC are all about, and a very crucial and important part. I think Bon gave him confidence.
No one was prepared for AC/DC's next album. TNT exploded into the charts at the end of 1975 and sold over 100,000 copies in Australia. Years was down and on record, the band had finally arrived.
TNT was really their first proper album. It was the first album we thought, you know, what sounds there. Tracks like TNT was still wonderful. You listen to them, they still got that drive, that emotion. They're fantastic tracks. And this was the moment ACDC were born internationally because people started to say, well, you know that ACDC, you know the sound. It's great. It's got a great groove to it. It had a little bit of elements of the Crow or the Stones or even the bass guitar, British band with that. It also had a certain, they want to say, punk attitude before punk actually had even been invented. The DC were very much at the street and they had a great groove, a great rhythm, and this was the album really first brought to the fore. And I think it made everybody sit up and think, oh, great, what a improvement. Real album. Yeah.
With TNT, the band had realised their potential. Yet domestic success was not the end of the rainbow for AC/DC. The following year, the band would step into unknown territory and leave the sunny shores of their homeland behind. While signing an important deal with Atlantic Records in Britain, AC/DC decided it was time to conquer new territories, and in March 1976 moved to London to begin the next phase of their master plan. Down to watch for it.
He never really came back to Australia.
Who's that?
AC/DC.
No, David Nichols. They didn't go to America, did they?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, we are confident, not only confident, but we are very.
Oh, what a horrible hairstyle he's got.
Yeah.
ACDC came to London and came
The bald hair.
they would break the UK. They had no doubt about it, absolutely no doubt. I saw their first gig at the Red Cow in Hammersmith in '76, and there was a little bit of a buzz about this band that came over from Australia. People had heard TNT, all TNT imported back, so there was a little bit of a buzz going about this band who'd come over and were over here now, and were going to tour and really make it. And when they came on stage for that first show at the Red Cow, there weren't very many people there. But they just came on with a sort of, you know what, this is the first one. We're prepared to pray for you lot, 50,000 people, because we know one day it will be, and indeed it has been. So from day one, they didn't have the problem. They'd done it before, and knew they could do it. And they also had so much confidence in themselves, not overconfidence, confidence, and immediately made an impact. As soon as they appeared on stage, that was it, the story.
The music scene in Britain at the time was on the brink of a punk rock explosion, and AC/DC unwittingly found themselves being bracketed with the likes of Johnny Rotten.
Where AC/DC arrived in the UK, that was just the door for the Sex Pistols and all that sort of stuff. So they were kind of a bit confused with that, in the marketplace. But I think the thing was AC/DC were traditionally hard-playing band, which couldn't be said for lots of the punk bands, that's for sure. So, they could clean the floor with it in terms of, rocking out.
Yeah, well, don't forget to bring the chicken home.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we thought the order of the punk and the new AC was much spoiled it for us, but it hasn't really. Yeah. There was a big bad brothers, if I can read it, big bad for a while, and you were certainly onto it. But the reason about it is to get rock music, we were getting back, Yeah. And even though we started the whole thing, we played it before the first 50 years, tour. Yeah. Now, we've always been there, and people didn't realise now they don't want more to become some of the things, I'm right from this, and they really were.
In May, AC/DC released their first official UK album, The British High Voltage, an amalgam of their previous two Australian LPs. They quickly gained the support of the British music press, and did a 20-day tour supported by Sounds magazine. In August, they toured Europe with Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, before releasing a new album in Australia, Dirty Deep Done Dirt Cheap.
Dirty was the most honed record they've made to date. They were starting to get on top of, really making records. And so, deservedly so, it was the most honed record they made at that time. And it contains some absolute classics. I always contended that most of their albums are a bit bitchy, mostly a bit bitchy, but if you get 3 or 4 or 5 great tracks, you're really on a winner. And Dirty Deep did that with, where the previous albums might have had one or two good singles, Dirty Deep is really started to come together.
Some of the early AC/DC music, despite being sort of powerful rock, was very soulful. It has to be said. In fact, you can ride on the liveliest of blues guitar players that you'll ever hear. And together they recorded it crazy. Big balls in there. That's just, very Bond love to write tongue in cheek, and nothing, AC/DC are really quiet tongue in cheek as that. Maybe it was considered a bit too simplistic, but there's a rock bar down the road from where we sat down, and it's got everyone's got AC/DC out on the jukebox, and big balls come from all the time. People love it.
While Dirty Deep performed well back in their homelands, AC/DC embarked on a tour playing larger venues in Britain. It culminated in the renowned performance of the Hammersmith Odeon.
Hammersmith Odeon was fantastic. Hammersmith Odeon was the culmination of the tour, and it was almost the culmination of this stage of their career. They made it this far to the famous Hammersmith Odeon stage. circles and circles, was just fantastic, it was wonderful. And they really took to it like a duck to water. They understood what was required on a big stage, they performed, they filled the stage, and not with effects, not with gimmicks, it was a fire and fan. And then that's right, they filled the stage, and they made a roaring, raucous sound that everybody there was like, yeah.
In December, the band returned to Australia to begin a two-leg comeback tour. Yet the climate had changed and they were portrayed as obscene punk youths in the national media. Several dates were cancelled and even Australian Parliament began discussing their effect on the morality of the young.
Punk rock was happening with all of these, tabloid beat-up punk rock, spitting on audiences and all that sort of crap that went with punk, And so AC/DC were kind of involved in that, or, by occasion in the UK. And they had never had that association in Australia, but, they went away, punk rock kind of exploded. The Sex Pistols were on the front page of the newspaper here, just as they were in the UK. Our punk band, the same, go off to the UK, but AC/DC come back, and so in that meantime, the tabloids here have gone, oh, well, they're a punk rock band, because that's what we understand now, so we're going to hound them as a punk rock band, and that was it. I mean, the media was after some punk the media was after some punk rock band. By this time, Angus had introduced his kind of, his moving routine. I mean, banned for that, fair enough, really. It's disgusting. So it was just nothing, it was a total beat-up, and it was actually something that really served to alienate the band. They really did feel this is King Pop. And they went back to the UK and said, well, we'll leave that behind us now. It's a really small pond. And they were right, I think.
Yeah, well, Australia lost
here.
out.
Australia to record their next album. But after performing gigs in February 1977, this incarnation of AC/DC would never officially play live in their homeland again.
You see?
Yeah, and because I getting recognition in England, obviously you're not going to practice.
They're making more money than ever. Australia wanted to be a backwater place.
1977 would be a momentous year for the band. Not only did it secret for Europe with Black Sabbath and later travel to America, it saw the release of their most honed and impressive work to date, Let There Be Rock.
Let There Be Rock is my favourite enthusiasm. Just David Harwood and Helen Parrish. They're all great from that era, but Let There Be Rock's personal favourite. What they did,
Do you want to give him the other bone?
Because they made the mix 13.
No, he's still eating it.
We still
No, he's not. He's sucking.
Hey?
I think
There it is. Look, you only put something going out there.
They looked at America and said, we've really established ourselves in the UK and America.
You've got that many bones out
Take it
there.
out and really get the point across. And from the title track to Classical Blues, all the album is aimed at America.
Let There Be Rock, I reckon, is it's my favourite AC/DC album, and it was the second last one that George and Harry, I think, at that time. But, look, yeah, Let There Be Rock, particularly one of the things that's kind of happening there is Let There Be Rock marked a bit of a shift where they became, that was more like an album band album. Well, I Let It Go is a great album, and so is Back in Black. But Let There Be Rock was the first one where they made an album that just come together perfectly like an album. And the title track, Let There Be Rock, is just, it's one of the great sort of rock tracks of all time to me.
Let There Be Rock itself was very much about the birth of American rock and roll. It was great, and it's such an epic and a tremendously climatic song. But the whole thing was moved up.
You hear it on the radio.
With every release, it was moved
You always
further.
on countdown.
In July, the band embarked on their first US tour and continued their tradition of
Australia is so not free thinking.
starting at the very bottom.
Still today.
And then when he died, one stopped, and then the other one would go up. Okay,
Now listen, they're the ones that were in it. Listen to what they got to say.
Day one. If you're going to do one in America, you don't go out and play New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, or about 5 or 6 other metropolitan centers. You go and you tour. You play everywhere. You go and play the Killer Dicks. You play the Backwards. You go everywhere in America. You do every tour possible to get yourself across. And they worked very hard for a few months and didn't stop. And they went out there with the determination we're going to come home with a foothold, or more than a foothold, in the United States. And they did it. And that's their work ethic. As AC/DC had a very strong working class ethic. And their working class ethic was that they were on the road to garden fans around the world, and they believed, and rightly so, the only way they would do it is by live performance. Because they were, fucking good rock and roll bands and the story.
During the first leg of this momentous tour, they were approached by Kiss bassist Gene Simmons to support his band on tour later in the year.
We got one of our shows, one of our shows in the Whiskey in Hollywood to see us play, and he came up to us and said, "Okay, this is man, and we toured in December, and we got to the tour with us, so that's what it is, business.
Yeah, right, I mean, huge.
So the first was quite amazing.
The tour was a success, and playing with such reputable acts gave the band a platform through which they could increase their growing fan base. On their return to Australia, they recorded Power Rage, another raw, brutal classic.
It kicks off. It's probably the best Bon Scott album. As good as Highway to Hell is, and it's a great record. Power Rangers is the definitive Bon Scott statement. They're all smoking the band, they're on fire. I mean, it's like that didn't take long to record. I think they must have been going in that studio just cut loose. But you can hear it. It's got a crazy energy to it. And there's one throwaway song in that record at all. It's, for me, every single song absolutely nails it. It's terrific fun to listen to.
The album was their most commercially successful so far, and AC/DC decided to return to the US to keep up the momentum, playing with the likes of Alice Cooper, Aerosmith, and Van Halen. It was during this 62-day tour that Bon Scott's friends and family became concerned about the singer's lifestyle.
It was always quite worried at that point because he was a hard drinker, he was hard. And the more on the road, as anybody who knows who goes on the road, it's a hard life. And the one way...
Check the dog.
The lyrics in that hard road is good and drugs. It's a cliche. But it's a cliche because it's true. In those early days of making success and doing non-stop, life gets tough and you get bored. And he's a hard drinker and a hard liver. I was doing a documentary about Australian music overseas in 1978, and I met with one in Atlanta, Georgia, and AC/DC were supporting two trips. After the show, we went back to, I went back to the hotel room, and he and I were talking about stuff, and saying how's it feeling, and got something really special. The 90s, he had a long coat on, jacket, red skin jacket with all the trimmings, and he looked, the absolute epitome of a pop star. So they were a lot of rock stars. We went back to his hotel room, and we met a couple of people that we both knew in America and stuff. We had an ask in the morning to wake him up, and then we started talking. We got drunk, and a bit of Pasadena at the time, and he started expressing to me that he thought I got the best deal because I was settled down, I wasn't on the road anymore. And he said, I really enjoyed that, I wish I was, because he said, thanks to the honest, I'm really getting sick of this. He said, we're on the road non-stop, and I need a break, I'm not break. And he said, I can afford to take a break, I've got a lot of cash coming my way. And he said, I really am getting sick of this. I'm sick of being on the road. All I want to do is go to the country somewhere. I'd like to settle down and live a life, an ordinary life like anyone else, and just play guitar. And they may have been the early hour meandering to the drunken man who was pissed off with and be on the road for years and years. On the other hand, somewhere there, I believe there is this core of unhappiness.
At the year's end, the live album If You Want Blood was released, highlighting the quality of the band's playing on stage. In January 1979, they returned to the studios in Sydney, but changes to their tried and tested production formula became necessary. This album had to break them and needed something new.
Highway to Hell was the break for that. It pushed everything forward. And for Highway to Hell to break through, AC/DC didn't just have to write the best songs of their career, they had to arrange it in the very best possible way, possibly better than they've ever thought about arranging songs before. And they needed a production to bring out every nuance, every note, every cranny of every song. Banda and Young weren't the people to do it. Great producers in their own right, they've taken ACDC a long, long way, but I think everybody within the camp knew this was going to be the one that will really make an impact. Take not one notch, but 2 or 3 notches. However, to do that, needed a different type of production approach.
The band left Banda and Young in Sydney and first travelled to Miami to work with Jimi Hendrix's producer Eddie Kramer. When this also failed to work, they again moved continents and took a chance with a young British producer, Robert Musselman.
They must have known how important it was because they fought over it for so long to get it right. The fact that Mutt Lange was out there to make his reputation too. I mean, that's it. The Carrot wasn't far away. The Carrot was really close, and they took the solid all through that, and Mutt Lange coming in with a challenge to him. Like, everybody had a challenge, and that does work.
The resultant album, Highway to Hell, quickly emerged as one of the cornerstones of rock music, and it thoroughly put ACDC on the world map.
The whole series that leads up to the peak of the achievement of ACDC, which is Highway to Hell. It's just a continuously better progression. They were getting better as musicians. They were getting better as songwriters. They were getting more comfortable with working in the studio, so comfortable that they felt it was the time was right to not use Banda and Young and to go with Mutt Lange. They must have been absolutely flying at the band at that point because they were so confident. You can hear that confidence all the way through, all the songs on Highway to Hell. I mean, it's there, you can start to hear that confidence coming through Power Range. The live album pretty much blows you away if you want live. But then they get the Highway to Hell and it's just like, in the band, they've arrived, it's their time.
Highway to Hell confirmed what many had often believed, that the band were born to play on the world stage.
ACDC to be playing one of the biggest bands in the world at the time, like I said, absolutely. Out came Highway to Hell, they made tours, they were everywhere. And they made almost effortless. Once I've seen they suddenly went from being a band who were executed to a band who were huge. They were suddenly one of the biggest names in the world of rock. Everyone was noticing them.
Yet tragedy was to change everything. After huge tours in America, the UK and Europe, the band spent the Christmas of 1979 in Australia. In February, Bon returned to London to write lyrics for a new album. On the 19th, after a heavy drinking session, Scott passed out in a friend's car.
That's where they
He
left
would never
him.
wake up.
Huh?
They knew he was pissed as a nerd and they left him in the car.
With the verdict of the Alzheimer's adventure,
Whoever he was with in England, that's what yeah, they left him in the car to die. I don't know if it was deliberate. You'd think you'd think, no.
Something wrong with him.
Yeah, they just, because he was too pissed, they just left him in the car. I'm thinking, you cunts, you go inside into a warm bed, and England's cold.
Yeah. And just left him in the car.
A huge Australian character beyond rock and roll, which is the great Australian American, as we like to call it. And definitely,
Oh, we like to call him now, but
Yeah, that's the time they got.
And that definitely happened. That record sales spiked accordingly,
Well, I was devastated when I heard that one died. Again, his wife Irene told me.
his ex-wife.
Late one night,
His
and
ex-wife.
I was
Yeah.
That was a split, wasn't it?
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't even together.
Deserves success, deserves to be happy in life. I don't think he died happy. And
See how Australia now,
also think
geez, I hate it. Oh, Australia. Ugh.
Look, it's different, but it's different countries do the same to their.
Well, they're not free thinking, are they? They're fucking, they're sheep. Got no brain to think on their own.
All their hard work the previous 5 years has been 12 months, 6 months even after Bond got died, when they recorded that in Black Album, which was a tribute to Bond, that became and remains the biggest album of all time. And Bond wasn't there to share it. He went out on the cusp. And I'm sure that was frustrating for him before the event, that he hadn't quite got there. That they always he could feel it all the time. But it's so sad that he went out before they made it. I tried. I just couldn't believe it. And I could hear all the tears all starting out, age 56. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it one day. And I still can't believe that he's not with us anymore, but he's spiritual. As long as ACDC rock and the music rock, I remember Bond.
AC/DC did keep on rocking and recruited Brian Johnson as Bond's replacement. They went on to become one of the biggest bands in music history and continue to sell out arenas today. But many feel that something changed, that a part of their spirit was lost when Bond passed away.
When Bob died, it was a sense of fun. Went out in the bag, I think. I think it's probably as simple as that. You know, and Brian's a lovely bloke. He's just one of the guys. Bond wasn't. Bond was like, he was one of the guys, but he was unique. He was the leader of the gang. People, you know, you can criticise him for drinking and taking drugs and enjoying himself too much if you want, but that's what people like about him. Because, you know, he bullshit, like what he saw is what he got. You can hear it gritty when he's singing even on record. So it's, you know, that is, you know,
That gave the songs up.
that kind of character on record.
Because he sometimes it had another meaning too. It had another meaning. Like Bob Scott said, I'm coming into town, lock up your daughters. I thought that's hilarious. Lock up your daughters and have the booze waiting, the bar open.
They have the money, they got to do whatever.
Try and capture the essence of what they had with Bond. It falls short because it's not Bob doing it. You can't replicate that. It's a true one-off.
They had got to the point that by the time Bond, if I just call it that, by the time Bond died, they had figured out what they could do and how to do it best. You know, they figured it out by then. So when Brian Johnson stepped in, it's all like set up one.
Yeah, it's already done.
And it was kind of like that. Yeah, there's been some good facts, but I reckon rock and roll's like that anyway, like all rock and roll.
He let Bob Scott laid a foundation for that other stuff.
It used to happen because no one really knew what they were doing and was making up the rules as they went along. That message has got really gone from rock and roll, I think, a lot now. I know it's just an old buddy buddy, but those records of George and Harry, you know, they're not replicated.
Bond's grave is Fremantle Cemetery, a site still visited by thousands of fans who leave flowers, beer bottles, and messages to honour both Bond Scott and what he represented. A very real rock star, and one who will continue to be remembered.
I still to this day, after all these years, have not met one single person anywhere in the world who didn't like Bond and Rooney. Never. I still haven't come across anyone who didn't like it. And of course, all the people, all the young people into it now, who are well and truly into their record sales show, they think he's, you know, the ultimate rock god as well. Why is that? It has to be for what he left behind, which was his image and the words that he said and his persona. There's nothing else, no other explanation. He was, Bon Scott was the real deal. I don't think we can overestimate the significance that Bon, which I think I still had trouble coming to grips with it. The guy from Little Old Service, still like, old starting to go country somewhere. Who knows, so big. He's still in there with like 3 generations, not just 1 generation. And he paves the way for so many other bands. Not just him, but
He got done for Cardinal Knowledge.
he's the personality.
He got done for Cardinal Knowledge.
Oh, with the under.
Yeah, but it was consensual, but they still.
What Bon contributed to rock and roll was that he took away also the load that showed this kind of guy, by the very nature of the fact that he was on stage. He brought an ordinariness and a slight edge of amateurishness about rock and roll to the fore. Something that wasn't slick. You know, Bon was certainly not slick. He was a rough diamond. And he brought that to AC/DC, and he brought that to rock and roll music. And I think that has to be one of the reasons why he's gone on and on and on. We were in Montana, which is a giant state to traverse. We didn't have a show. I think our last show got canceled on us. We crossed the border of North Dakota into the wild zones of eastern Montana, and from then on, it's just surviving the boredom pretty much. I think I probably got some Taco John's or some shit. We had just filled up in Glendive, Montana. This was the first Bismarck band called the Cognitive Police. A guy at work had a van for sale for $500. This van was a piece of shit. This was our second tour with this van. It was a 1977 Dodge Tradesman, and the entirety of the interior was metal. It had no climate controls to speak of, really. It was a kind of just a giant chunk missing in the middle where someone had sort of put a tape deck, and the horn, it no longer had a horn. That piece had been kind of ripped out, and there was a wire that was kind of dangling from the steering column. So if you wanted to honk, you had to take this wire, and the end had been stripped off, and so you would take this bare wire and ground it to the steering column, and then that would turn on the horn. We were making our way. Making good time. There's a hill right before Forsyth, Montana, which is a very small town. And you come down this big hill, and I think just after we peaked that hill, there's this huge clang and this horrific dragging sound.
Who are they?
Dragging behind the van. Suddenly, Dan goes, "Oh shit!" And you hear noise like
You go, "Oh shit!"
Thudding noise, and I kind of just. I thought I was one tire, but Dan wasn't losing control of the van, and he just starts swerving the van radically to the side of the road, and starts panicking. We hear like this metal on concrete, and immediately I'm thinking this is an 80s movie, so there are going to be sparks, because I'm sure this is shooting some amazing trail of sparks behind us. And
They're having a car accident.
earlier in the trip, I found out that the top of our gas tank had a huge hole in it. And essentially, it was just a bucket for gas rather than a tank for gas. So we're coming down this hill, and I have no more gas pedal. I can steer and brake, and so I'm kind of trying to just shimmy us to the side of the road. And of course, it goes down, right? So we're trying to get to the side of the road, but not flip us into the ditch. And he kind of goes over, and everyone get out, because he sees liquid, he smells stuff. Like, everyone get out, fancy fluid. I distinctly recall hearing a sort of like there was no door. There was no door on my side, so I had to wait for Nate to get out. And because it came to a stop so fast, the guitarist that we strategically sat in front of the door had fallen to block my egress out of the door, and was like, "Get out of the van, Nate, get in!" It's like, I'm bloody pushed the guitar in my way, so he was blocked in. Plus, he had a giant soda in his hand because he was gone to Taco Bell or Papa John's, someplace like that. I reached over him, opened the door, kind of, not so gently probably, nudged him out, and then kind of jumped out myself.
And we all jumped out of the van and ducked down on the ground as if, like, imminent explosion was about to take place.
And nothing happened.
Nothing happened, okay, well, it's hard to explode. I guess,
I feel like idiots.
And so, it turns out it didn't explode. 80s movies lied to us.
I mean, no explosion, nothing else, and so I just, we kind of get up from the side of the ditch that we're sitting in, and I just kind of walk over the van, open the door, and grab my stuff, so kind of walk back out. Everyone's like, huh, you got that priorities in these situations. I figured if we're going to be stuck on the road in Montana, I want my combo back in.
We later found out that it was the U-joint, the rear U-joint, had given up.
Sheared off, broken off, with, looked like oil or possibly gas leaking out. So we're like, no. That van, that's total.
So that was the end of it. We got towed into Billings.
They towed it into the parking lot of a Motel 6 next to some other dingy motel. Dumped the van out kind of in the corner, away from everybody else. And we're there. I mean, that's it. We're stuck. So it's like, okay, well, we just made the Billings, and of course it's, I think, Sunday. So, where are we going to find a van on a Sunday? Who's going to fix it on a Sunday? I think at that point we decided, no, we're not going to fix this van. The van's not worth it. Fuck it. So the decision was made to scrap the fucking van, load up the gear into a U-Haul, and drive.
But U-Haul's only going to have that big ass bench seat. 3 of us are going to be fitting in there. And this is a black flag. We're going to put one of us in the back. And so I'm like, okay, well, one of us has to go just take a Greyhound or something. And so Jury and Nate were like on each other's tips at this point. And so Jury and Nate was like, I'll go. So I got on a Greyhound to go back to Seattle. We, Eric and I, then go pick up the U-Haul.
And they had one that would accommodate us, no problem.
But the U-Haul has 2 bucket seats, not a bench seat.
So there's only room for 2 of us.
Just you and me, right? Just you and me. So then we drive back to the motel and we're like, Nate, hey, get out of the shower. Hey, slight change of plans. We're going to go get your ass on a Greyhound too.
And I think we had 20 minutes to get there.
And so we just drop off the bus station and sort of like, hey guys, we're going to see you later.
And then boom, I was on a Greyhound, naked on the bus. We assumed everything was okay, and leave, and try to figure out, okay, well now we gotta take everything and put it into the U-Haul. And then we kind of thought afterwards,
oh my god, wouldn't it be fucking hilarious? These 2 guys have been at each other's throats. Can you imagine if Chris was sitting there,
in the bus, he left a nice
Oh, they love each
seat
other.
next to him, he put his backpack on it, to claim us to sit next to anybody. Oh, fine, all these fucking assholes are going, he just, I'm so glad the tour is over with. I just had this nice long bus ride and just ride home.
and they're just about to leave, and he's like, I can't believe I've seen it here. Where is that?
And then we're just thinking, oh, we hilarious. Just when he was thinking that,
The door opens up.
Nate walks over and just sits down next to him.
Hey man, how's it going? We're gonna be fucking best buddies, huh?
He told me later that Nate came up behind him and whispered in his ear,
I'm gonna kill you. And I look up, and it's Nate, who promptly then sits next to me, and we get to ride in a Greyhound together for the next 24 hours. It's a delight.
Who are they?
I don't know, that's what I'm sure. Just music because we're not singing. What's that dude that I watch when he was looking at it with a toy or something like that? And all of these was, oh, really blues or something. They singing that, them singing their lyrics. Like, something really blues or something else. But he's dying.
What is touring? Touring is when you have this great idea to get a bunch of your friends and hop in a van and play as many shows to as many people as possible.
Some of whom maybe wanted to see you, and a lot of whom had no intention of doing so.
Touring is when your band is playing a number of shows away from home, and rather than making individual trips, you string them all together in one long trip, and that trip is called the tour.
You arrange stuff in different places, cities or towns that have some kind of a place for you to set up your equipment and make music.
It's just when you take your music on the road somewhere else, hopefully somewhere you have never been.
So you have experiences in places that you wouldn't go to otherwise, and you meet people that you wouldn't meet otherwise.
At this level, going out, trying to have fun, probably losing money, and that's you have good stories to come out of it.
It is part of the contractual obligation when you decide to make music.
The basic dry part of it is, I do this so I can take my music to more people.
Usually for free beers, sometimes for a little bit of food, and if you're lucky, for money.
I've actually people really say they're going on a tour, or they want to say anything else, it's like, oh, cool, you're going on a tour, and they're really impressed.
If anybody who's not a musician has a conception of touring, it's probably based on sort of mythology from popular culture, where, you know, the band has an elaborate tour bus that's full of groupies, and you roll into town and the party never stops.
I think it's a really super, and I use the word neutrally, a super sexy thing.
Like, I think it's just like a party on wheels, but they you're just going to show up, and you're gonna have so much fun, and everything's just gonna be, you know, a party 24/7. Unfortunately, it was kind of bouncing back to most of my girlfriends that if they cared that I toured at all, it was that they had this idea of what tour was, and it's just not that. Where does this fantasy come from? Where does the
Led Zeppelin.
Oh, you're right. That's
That's 80s rock band or something, like I feel like, yeah.
I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, so this is where my version of it comes from, is just, all those 80s glam rock bands and hair bands that, in their videos and their whole imagery, their image of the band is that they're out on the road banging chicks and pounding whiskey, partying every night.
If you hear a crazy story of a band on tour, you see like movies about documentaries and stuff, where they're down in fists of vodka.
And those dudes, I think, actually did do that.
Yeah, most people, but they have a very like sort of classic rock expression or impression of what tour is. It's like a Grand Funk song, American band. Like that is most people's impression of tour.
Big bands tour, they come to town in the bus, they party you out, they shag a few groupies, and they move on down the road into the sunset after that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Some misogynistic fantasy of just going out and having indiscriminate sex and, lots of drugs. No, it's a bunch of fucking dudes in a van, smelling each other's farts, getting on each other's nerves, playing with nobody. I would say that the fantasy of touring is
probably almost famous. And the reality of touring is, the road. And the guy, slightly more. Yeah. Like just more dystopian. Or Mad Max, where you constantly feel like you're about to run out of fuel.
Old people think it is what it is, which is you're driving around in shitty circumstances, making no money, and it's uncomfortable. But, you know, if you want to do it, you're going to do what you want. Young people think it's like a non-stop party, which is
The idea that you're supposed to be, wildly drunk and having the best time of your life. I don't know, would anybody go on tour if they didn't think that, I mean, they might without the drunk part, but I think we all have like some idea of rock band mythology, or we wouldn't have picked up electric guitars and drums in the first place.
That's the easy opinion, like, and apparently, for the most part, for most bands, neither one of those things happens.
I don't know, I've definitely toured with people who got laid every night and, were partying every night. I wouldn't say that it was like a blast.
We tried to do that on some party thing, which was just kind of crashing for any time. We toured a band who did that, and there was always a moment in the 2 or 3 weeks we toured with them when we started hearing sort of shit.
Brian was super wasted, and he could talk to this girl all night. He's going all right. Maybe something would happen. And but he's so drunk that it just sort of over and just he was like on the front of himself while talking to this girl, and it's just like, what do you have to do? Well, for that girl in the Zulu band in 2005, it was.
So my family would ask me about tour, and some like extended family would ask me, "How's your little band?" Or "How did you put out a little record?" And they can put a little in front of anything if it's the most condescending thing. So, but they didn't understand. And when it was like if you weren't on MTV and no one had ever heard of you, like you're working so hard at this thing. So most people just thought you're just like a miserable failure, going out on the road all the time.
You're not to see the reality of rock touring is just like bigger bands.
Yeah.
Playing bigger halls, so
A lot of people.
yeah, we're making plans. And I only work for the 30 and 30 people, 30,000 people, yeah.
We did play a show on the East Coast, I think it was in like Boston. And we pulled up to the venue and there's a line of people out the door. We were like, fuck yeah. I mean, finally, this is a tour full of like weather delays and 4 people from each show. We called it the Suck Tour because it was just horrible. And so we go there and there's like 70 people waiting in line outside the building. So we all got super excited. We're like, it's fucking awesome. And come to find out it was a WWF wrestler band playing the floor above us.
Wait, a wrestler out there?
Yeah, oh, he still does. And it was like the worst bro metal. Me and my buddy Troy went upstairs to watch the show. They're like a bunch of meatheads with mullets. It was actually amazing. Only 4 people came to our show in the basement.
So yeah, the reality of underground touring is hard to the fantasy, just that it's a totally different level of it, you know? The fantasy of it started at a time when being in a rock band was something really special, and 6 people on the block didn't all but it's like just the dudes who lived in a big city and were the luckiest dudes ever played bands.
And when I actually worked in a music store, these sales guys would sort of corner us every once in a while and go, "What are you doing?" Or like, "I've never heard of your band. How are you going on tour?" There was some sort of like fascination. They did it in kind of an angry tone too. Like we weren't really getting respect for the kind of tour that we were doing. But it wasn't big rock star stuff. And it's really hard to explain the underground to somebody who's not involved in it.
You know, before punk and before like, you know, Black Flag supposedly kind of basically put together the more modern touring route for underground bands and just a network, I guess is more what I mean. And before that, touring was like, on hack, come see a town in the class or something, you know?
And that's really where it boils down to is like, most people think that the tour is like a really glamorous thing and, you know, big bands do it on buses and it's
you don't have to really do anything, you just show up and all these people are there to see you, that's awesome.
But in reality, it's, I mean, yes, it's a road trip, but it's very hard work. You're not seeing a whole lot of the places that you're going, you're seeing it inside the clubs and gas station bathrooms.
You know, you don't really get to do stuff you want to do or see things you want to see. I've been to Prague twice in my life, and the first time I was there, I had 40 minutes downtown, but I see as much stuff as I could, so we could hurry over and get to this venue where we waited 6 hours for people who were supposed to be waiting for us when we got there.
People are always like, oh, you know, what kind of sights did you see when you went to New York or whatever? And it's like, I got some soup and, and I saw a disgusting club bathroom. Talking to a PT.
I would say 75% of tour is just boring spots. You would have 10% of your actually on stage, like playing music or like doing stupid stuff with your bandmates. But then most of the time you're just sitting there. The reality is going is much more mundane.
You are hungry, or perhaps you ate really late at night, you have indigestion, and you didn't sleep very well.
Wake up, at 8 a.m.
Someone kicks you awake. It's 9. We said we were going to leave at 8, get up. Oh, did anyone make coffee? No, we'll get it on the road. No, you're not going to get it on the road.
Hope that your van is still there, they haven't been broken into.
We're seeing, you like, get our stuff together, load the building, load in our stuff, do it every night, and load it out, load it in.
Load your stuff into the motel.
We don't want to get any stolen, so it's loading our stuff around.
So you're a little short on time to start the day. So you're kind of frantic and hurried.
So you then drive, and you drive, and you drive, and you drive.
We've done a 2,000 mile drive to start the tour, which is not good planning.
We had a lot of long drives where we came and do other things except drive and get food one along the way. That's super boring and uninteresting. That's kind of reality of it.
That's funny. I mean, it's just work. It's just mile to mile to mile, and it's having to, I'll tell you, when I was big, for me, it's trying to find a place to fucking take a shit. It's like, if eating and shitting become primary obsessions, because it's like kind of a thing you're gonna plan your day around. You don't know what you're gonna eat, you don't know where you're gonna sleep, you don't know where you're gonna take a dump. Those things become really important to you. Worrying about it constantly, knowing where you're gonna use, which toilet you're gonna use, is kind of a big deal. Like,
I mean, if you can hit the sort of like, hit your marks and take a shit in a stall with a door, brother, you made it. Like, you cracked the code.
Then, you know, with any luck, you get to the venue with a little time to spare, and there's no one around. And it's like, you know, a bar before anything happens. It's kind of a really depressing place. It smells like old stale beer, and they give you beer tickets. And there's nothing else to do, so you drink beer.
And you load in and sound check, and typically somebody's angry at you either for the noise that you're making during sound check, or that you got there late, or whatever. Somebody's always mad at you.
You hopefully are not drunk yet, so you know, you and your band can bicker about where exactly you put things and whether you remember to bring the drum hardware in.
Smooth things over, you finish your sound check. Sometimes you have time for a meal, sometimes you don't.
Hang out, play, work way around, play.
You know, depending where you're playing the bill, maybe you get to play before midnight, and you do a lot of hanging around and trying to pace your drinking.
Then you play the show, try to sell some t-shirts after it's all over with.
If I say you play for an hour, that's probably even an exaggeration. It's still like that hour that you're on stage. It's the only thing worth doing.
The 40 minutes that you're on stage is a great part of the day, and everything else, I liked it, but I totally understand why a normal person would need it.
And you have to, no matter how tired or how drunk, you still gotta load up and worry about where you're staying, who's sober enough to drive, who's staying in the van,
And get up and start doing it again. For a month or 3.
You know, I think some people have different definitions of what encompasses work going out. So work, what do you consider a tour?
Longer than like 3 days.
Yeah, that's a debatable one. I want to say a week or more.
Personally, for me, a tour is 5 shows or more with one or 2 shows out of state, and like a proper state, at least East Coast states where it decides what other county or city.
It's anything more than 3 consecutive shows you have to travel to go play. So not counting shows in your home zip code, I would say town, maybe even state, depending on how geographically spread out that state is. I'm not sure, like 18, there's 3 weeks, we always play spot, so you go a week off at that, so.
If you're starting from home, I think the bar is a little higher, like a long weekend, you can do like 3 or 4 days from home.
You have to be like, at least a 2-day drive from home. Like, it has to take you a long time to get home.
Like 1 night away from your bed, now that's just a show somewhere else.
So if you did like San Francisco and hopefully.
No. Hey, I would say if you sleep sequential nights away from your own bed, that's a pretty good start of the tour.
So if you did San Francisco or maybe like LA,
Yeah, for sure.
that would count as a tour.
Yeah.
You only need 2 shows.
Why do you have to do at least 5 days? You know, that's a tour. 8 people know that's a tour.
Yeah, about 5 days, because that's when you start to like lose track of real life, real life characters. So that's how I roll. Any other mini tour, anything less than that is the job.
What about your, like, the closest place, Vancouver once? That's a traffic tour.
A day per town, so maybe it'll be more than a day.
But then also like, so you count something we can fly out just like Asia. You know, because that's a huge investment of time and energy and money, but then to work on really one show.
So have you had people say that if you fly out and do 2 shows, that's a tour?
If you go on a plane, you're on tour. Anytime you get on an airplane, you take a tour, I think it'll be me.
Yeah.
Over, you gotta drive it, like, touring to me just means you left town and you played more than 1 show.
We decided 2 show minimum out of town stay.
That's the other big stuff.
Okay, that is totally.
Big cities, it's more like,
You should not, I'm sorry, that's a weekend, yeah, that's the job.
Yes, because if it's under a week and then it's a jaunt. A week or more is a tour, a week or less is a jaunt. I'm calling it.
At least 2 shows out in different states. And at least 5. I think it's a pretty broad fight. As far as arbitrary criteria goes.
Hey,
Fine.
go here,
Who is it?
Troy. You turn that.
Yeah, turn it. Soraya? Yep, I can, yeah. So, where are you?
I'm at beside the house inspection now.
How does it look?
It's got a nice backyard.
Yeah.
It's got that go on for it.
Oh,
But
the inside's,
it's better than the other one.
yeah.
I'll just show you. This is the photo.